Greetings and welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. I'm your host, Pete Pardo. Today is Friday, November the 10th. We've got a single release show for you today. We're actually going to be doing a bunch of these in the coming days and weeks, where we're going to focus on like one major release that's come out and spend a little time with it rather than just hit you with a whole bunch of things. But we're going to do that as well. So today we've got, like I said, a single release. Just came out recently. It is a live album by a classic band, U.S. progressive rock legends, Kansas. It's called Leftoverture-Live and Beyond. So, as many of you who know, who've been following Kansas for many years, the band has gone through some personnel changes in recent years. So, Steve Walsh has retired from the band as of a couple of years ago. His voice was kind of going on him, and I think he had just really had enough of the road, so to speak, and it's time for him to move on. And what they did was the band brought in a new singer. His name is Ronnie Platt, and he actually also appeared on the band's most recent studio album, which came out last year, which was the Prelude Implicit. A very strong return to form for this classic band. Ranked pretty highly on my best of year in 2016 last year. So who's in Kansas nowadays? For those of you who perhaps have kind of dropped off and haven't been following the band, shame on you, but this is who's in the current band. So we've got David Ragsdale on violin. He's actually been in the band for quite a long time. We've got Zach Rizvi. He has been helping them a lot with the songwriting and also playing second guitar. We've got founder Phil Ehart on drums. We've got founder Rich Williams on guitars. Ronnie Platt, who I mentioned before, who also plays little keyboards. You've got David Mannion on keyboards. And then Billy Greer on bass and vocals. Billy's been with the band since the 80s. So very solid lineup. The most important thing to really remember and understand with this current lineup of the band, these guys now can play any of the material they want with no restrictions. And this is no disrespect to Steve Walsh, but if you kind of went to see Kansas live throughout like maybe the 90s and the early 2000s, Steve's vocal range was not nearly what it used to be. And I think he had a lot of limitations by exactly, what material he could sing. So the band's live set list for about 20 years didn't really change much. Kind of this, they played the same 9, 10, 11 songs and they played tour after tour after tour, most of the notable tunes, which is all fine and dandy, but for the hardcore fans who want to hear a lot of that classic era material, the deep tracks from those first 5 or 6 albums, didn't really get a lot of that. However, now with Ronnie on board, who let me be clear, Ronnie is not a Steve Walsh sound-alike. Ronnie's got his own style. Does he sound at times a little Walshish? Yeah, perhaps, but it's mostly on inflections and things like that. He's got his own style, so he brings his own spin to these songs and does a fantastic job. So what do we get on this live album? So, this is celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Leftoverture album. So in addition to that, it's also celebrating the release of the Prelude Implicit last year. So what Kansas has done is they've gone out on tour and they played the entire Leftoverture album, start to finish, surrounded by all sorts of other gems from the Kansas catalog and a healthy sampling from the Prelude Implicit album. So for those of you who have seen Kansas numerous times over the last 15, 20 years, where they play basically an hour and 10-minute set, if you have had the chance to see them on this tour, you're going to get close to 2 hours of vintage Kansas plus some great new material. So what do we have here? So you can probably hear it playing in the background. So we've got Icarus 2 and Icarus Born on Wings of Steel. 1-2 punch there. Fantastic. Point of No Return, Paradox, Journey from Mariabron, Lamplight Symphony, Dust in the Wind, Rhythm in the Spirit from the recent album, The Voyage of 818, also from the recent album, and Section 60, also from the new album. That's just disc 1, okay? Disc 2 is the entire Leftoverture album, played live, front to back. So, of course, Carry On Wayward Son, The Wall, What's on My Mind, Miracles Out of Nowhere, Opus Insert, Questions of My Childhood, Cayenne Anthem, Magnum Opus, and then to end the whole thing, an encore of Portrait He Knew from the wonderful Point of No Return album. Speaking of Point of No Return album, it's going to be the 40th anniversary of that, right? So are we due for a tour with them playing that front to back? I hope so. That would be pretty cool. It'd be cool to hear them do the Spider and some of those other Closet Chronicles and things like that. So anyway, so what does this look like? So I showed you the front. Okay, very cool artwork, reminiscent of the recent studio album. And then if we take a look on the inside, there's the band right there, all their glory. All right, you get the 2 discs, and the booklet is very cool as well. Nice fold-out stuff here, live pics. What else is here? A lot of live stuff. All right, and then basically almost you get like a kind of poster here, celebrating the majesty of Leftoverture. If you, I'm not sure if they're still running the price now, but Amazon was selling this for $7.99 the first week it came out. I jumped all over that. The sound quality is great. The performances are wonderful. Like I said, it's just this band in its current incarnation is firing on all cylinders. And, you know, I'm sure some people are going to be like, oh, but I miss Steve Walsh. Is it ever going to be the same without him? Well, you know what? Sometimes bands move on. And the spirit of classic Kansas is still here. Like I said, Ronnie is not a Steve Walsh sound-alike. So, you know, they're not some band that just went and got someone who sounded exactly like him. But he brings his own identity. But the songs sound like vintage Kansas. And, you know, we've got the 2-guitar lineup going again. We've got a full-time keyboard player. Ronnie plays second keyboards. Ragsdale is just ripping it up on violin. It's really good. It's really, really good. It's a great-sounding live album. And, you know, one of my favorite live albums of all time is the 2 for the Show live album that they did in the late 70s. And they've released various live albums over the years, but this is probably the best since back then because, again, it covers so much material from throughout their career, so I really dig it a lot. So, yeah, Kansas Leftoverture-Live and Beyond. Fantastic live album. If you don't already have it and you're a fan, you need this. Go out and get it. You will love it. Will they release a DVD of this at some point? Blu-ray? I hope so. It'd be pretty cool. Too bad they didn't put it all in one set, but you know how it goes these days. So anyway, that's it for today. Signing off with some cool Kansas news and a review of the new live album. Like I said, go out and buy it, but be on the lookout. Our next episode coming up, we've got a review of, I'll spill the beans right now, of this bad boy right here. So that's coming up in a couple days. We're also going to do a full show reviewing the latest from Communic and Sons of Apollo and Oz and Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats and all sorts of other stuff. So tune in then. Take care. Investigate all this new stuff, and we'll see you next time.